Hello, Yakri here with another Dominions 4 video. Hopefully this will actually be your first video of mine that you watch for Dominions 4, as it was pointed out to me that I should probably make a separate video series to cover pretender creation and general expansion, how to play the game rather than specific nations, and then move on to covering nations one at a time, which in hindsight seems pretty obvious. So, for this video, we're going to be covering pretender creation and what different types of pretenders there are. Scales, Dominion candles, that kind of thing. So, I'm going to create a nation for a nice fun... did I say create a nation? I did say create a nation. Create a pretender for a nice fun nation like Baratos. We're not going to talk about them. We're just going to look at their gods, right? So, if you're a little new to Dominions 4... it's a turn-based strategy game. It's a lot like, various other games such as Civilization, except that it does away with all that wishy-washy diplomacy and economy stuff in favor of the time-honored human tradition of stabbing people in the face only when you aren't able to reach their backs. However, something you may be familiar with from various games is the nation creation screen, right? Which is this right here, right? Well, this is what it looks like in Dominions. For other games, I'm sure it's much different. And this is what you're going to use to customize general things about your nation. You've got magic paths and a pretender, right? This is your god, or the closest thing to you in this game that you're trying, you're the god trying to ascend to the throne of the Pantocrator and win the game. This is a set of scales, that's what they're called in the game. These are different effects that influence what benefits you get from provinces and special events you might get and how you can recruit units. Mostly it affects your income, the number of units you can recruit per turn, there's a couple special effects for growth that I'll mention later, the likeliness that you will get good or bad events and events in general, and research for your mages. Down here we have imprisonment, right, which is how soon your character or pretender is going to be coming into the game, right? Now you get all the bonuses from your Dominion during the entire duration of the game, but your pretender has the ability to go into combat itself, cast spells and rituals, and it also has the special effect of spreading your Dominion candles, which I'll cover in a minute, at a rate of 1 per turn, which is what temples that you can build in the game do as well. And when it's not in the game, such as if you pick dormant or imprisoned, it's not going to give you any of those effects. It's just not on the map, and you can't do anything with it. Dormant is pretty self-apparent if you look at the bottom of the screen. Oh, right. Tooltip goes away if I don't mouse over it. It'll appear in about a year, give or take a few months. I think it goes up to about a year and a half. Imprisoned is 3 years to 3.5 years. I think it can show up in year 2.5 as well. It goes either way. And Awake is you get your pretender immediately at the start of the game. Now, you're probably wondering what the gain points part of this is, because obviously that's the only reason you would want to take Dormant or Imprisoned. Getting something later is worse than getting it right now, and that gives you more design points, which you see up here. Now, design points are good for 2 things, and that's they're good for 3 things. That's choosing your base pretender body. They have different costs. Statue of War right here is 170, whereas the Great Sage is only 110. And that usually represents special abilities your pretender might have, as well as their magic paths, hit points, that kind of thing. Their overall stats, because they are an actual unit in-game that you can do things with. The other 2 things you can do... Am I getting the right number here? Yes. The other 2 things you can do with your design points is you can purchase magical paths, which are these here, and you can purchase Dominion candles and scales, right, which are... kind of tied together. Dominion candles is the strength of your divine power, which essentially means that you're going to get these little candles on the provinces that you control in game, and they spread outwards from your temples, your prophet, and your pretender. I don't think they actually spread outward from your prophet. I think they only spread outward from your pretender and your temples, but your prophet gives you another check, I believe. I should probably look that up, but suffice it to say, Dominion candles aren't actually that important anymore. They've been very important in past iterations of the game. You may find some really old videos and whatnot that mention like, oh, you need 6 or 7 Dominion to avoid dying. If all your Dominion candles are taken off the map, you will lose the game. But it's very difficult for this to happen. Enemy candles have to make a check, which is kind of a random roll against your candles to try and reduce them and then push onto your territory and eventually kill you. You get a base 50% chance to produce a candle and spread your candles, and it goes up by 5% for each point you have in Dominion. What this actually means is that around 4 or 5 Dominion, you can pretty easily just have your candles spread out and cover your whole territory without too much trouble. If you build 1 or 2 temples, which spread additional candles, and if you build enough of them, they increase your Dominion strength, you really won't have any problems with this. This means that certain nations can go as low as 2 or 3 Dominion. Usually you wouldn't want to do that, partly because sacred units, which I'm going to have to cover in another video, require points of Dominion to recruit, right? You have a certain number of sacred points equal to your Dominion every turn, and use those to recruit sacred units. So, they're very good, typically. So you want a fair number of candles. You might want like 5 or 6 for any nation that cares about recruiting its sacred units, which is a fair number of nations. Now, I normally play with 5 candles these days. If you happen to have some extra points left over, often you can get a 6th, but 5 or 6 will pretty much set you up to ignore this stat and not have to deal with it during gameplay almost ever. There are a couple nations that can kind of push Dominion or might want to push Dominion, and then maybe you have to build a few temples or recruit a priest or 2 to counter them. And we'll talk about that more in another video. So, the Dominion candles are what spreads your scales, which are all these different stats, to various provinces, right? Provinces don't start with these affecting them. They'll start neutral, or maybe they'll have some magic sites that add scales to the province. So, your Dominion does need to push out and cover provinces, and then these scales will be gained every turn at a rate of 1 scale per candle of Dominion. So, high Dominion will allow you to push out and cover provinces with your scales more quickly, sort of. There's a fairly annoying formula that goes into it where if you have 1 point of candle, your Dominion will spread very wide very quickly and then easily be pushed back by other Dominions. And if you have like 9 candles, it will spread very reliably with a great deal of strength and can push back other Dominions, but it won't spread out as quickly because candles will stack up in provinces because they have to slowly build up to the maximum number you can have. So again, it's important to know these things just in the odd event that you have to know them for some reason, to avoid death or to get someone else killed. But it's not going to be relevant to gameplay very often. So let's talk about the actual scales. Scales affect not a lot of different things in this game, actually. There's a couple that are going to be a little bit more important than others. So right here now we've got every Dominion effect possible stacked up. Your scales can increase or decrease your income. They can reduce the unrest in provinces or prevent unrest from being reduced to a degree. They can give you more resources or a resource penalty. They can give you supplies or a supply penalty. They can give you growth. Growth is a effect that increases the population of the provinces you control. This is very good because the population in a province, along with effects like it being a farmlands or a forest, influence the amount of income you get from a province. I believe it influences the amount of supplies and other things too. So you want a lot of population in provinces as a general rule. There's only... I'm not sure there's any nations that actually want provinces to be low population. I don't think it's a thing. There are a few undead nations known as populous nations, and they tend to kill everything in their provinces as a feature of their nation, but they don't necessarily want that to happen. It's just unavoidable. So this is a very good effect you get out of growth, and it actually is more powerful than the income benefit you can get from, say, Order over here. Order gives you a pretty large income increase. What did I do? Oh, whoops! I put heat up there a little bit too much. So we'll leave that neutral for a moment. So Order gives you a pretty large income increase. It's the largest one besides growth. Growth, if you put it up by itself, it will not look like it gives you as large of an income increase as Order does, which is the dove over here. But it actually gives a larger income increase after turn 10. Most games are going to go to turn 40 to 80, so that leaves you with the majority of the game growth being better for you. Events. This is something it's a little hard to tell how beneficial this really is for you or how bad it is for you. There are random events in this game, and they can have a wide variety of effects. They can have negative effects, positive effects, and you can get all variety of things from them. You can get special magical items, you can get money, you can get bonus province defense, you can get all kinds of things from these. You can have all kinds of penalties as well, like bandits invading one of your provinces, or a loss of gems, or a loss of gold, or a permanent reduction in income on some province, that kind of thing. So, getting more events, in this case we're at -1 because I moved Order up to 3 and Order reduces that. Getting more events isn't good or bad on its own. However, if you have a lot of other good scales, getting a lot of events is a good thing. Events are tied to the scales you have in your nation. So if you have a lot of positive scales, it opens up a lot more positive events, and it opens up a lot better positive events, especially stuff like Growth 3, Luck 3, Magic 3, open up special good events that you would like to get. It doesn't increase your odds of getting good events or bad events, but it does mean that there's more very good possibilities available. Whereas if you have a lot of negative scales, like if you have Death and Sloth and Turmoil, it's going to reduce the number of really good effects, right? And widen the number of bad effects that you can get. Although it doesn't necessarily slant you towards getting good or bad effects. What does that is luck or unluck, or also known as misfortune, right? So it's just going to be represented by luck plus or minus 15% per point of luck, fortune/misfortune here, right? Probably should have started with all these scales can go positive or negative up to 3. So luck actually changes the percentile chance for any given event to be good or bad, right? There's a certain number of events that are going to happen to you per turn based on the number of provinces you control and your bonus to events happening or penalty to events not happening. So having a lot of luck means that you're going to get a lot of good events. It's hard to quantify how good luck is. It's a pretty good stat. There are certain nations that don't really want Order, and because of that, they really want luck. There are also certain nations that, like the Popkill nations I mentioned previously, that kind of don't get a lot of benefit from their provinces, and so they would like to have luck because it is a source of income that isn't affected by all of your population dying off, because you can get events that give you large sums of gold. The other nations that would really like luck scales are nations that have a wide diversity in magic, and they can take great usage of magical gems to craft items and summon creatures. A good example of this would be Middle Age Agartha, if you want to look a nation up that would benefit from luck scales quite a bit. So that's what you would use luck for, really. If you're in a position where you get some special benefit from Turmoil, right? So you can't take Order scales, and that's going to increase the number of events that happen for you, and so it benefits you more to make sure those events are good. Or if you're a nation that needs a lot of magic gems, because getting magic gems for events is very common, or if you're a nation that can't get extra income any other way. There's also cases where you can play a nation that really likes to have as many positive scales as possible. You might take, 3 Order, 2 productivity, which is that hammer to the right of Order, whatever heat scales best suit your nation, 3 growth, 3 luck, and 1 to 3 magic. There are a few nations that really just want massive amounts of scales to benefit them as much as possible. That's something for a nation-specific video. So that covers luck. There's one more effect, which is research plus 1 RP. Not very obvious what that does, actually. What it does is that every mage in your dominion where you have the magic 1 scale is going to produce 1 extra point of research per turn. This is very good if you're a nation like Marverni or Arcosvale is not one of those nations because it has a special thing. Excuse me. Marverni or Late Age Ulm that can produce a very large number of not very powerful but cheap mages. So if you're increasing a mage's research per turn from 6 to say 8, that's a much larger bonus than from 17 to 19, right? And if you produce very expensive mages that have a very large bonus, you're going to want to not produce as large a quantity of them, because units in this game have upkeep, and it's going to be very expensive for you and weigh down your nation's economy, such as it is, quite a bit more.